So for Wolf Chan, we're going to start with a slip knot. You can start with a magic ring too, but I find that this is easier with this yarn. So start with a slip knot on your hook, and then we're going to chain 2. So I'm going to use the first chain as my magic ring. So start with 6 single crochet into that first chain. So once you have 6 single crochet, round 2 is going to be 2 single crochet, and then we'll increase in the 3rd stitch. So 1 single crochet in the 1st stitch. And if it helps, you can use a stitch marker here and mark that 1st stitch, especially if you're a beginner. That helps a lot. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use this bobby pin as my stitch marker and just mark that 1st stitch. Make 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then we'll increase in the 3rd stitch. So we're going to make 2 single crochet stitches in that 3rd stitch. And then we're going to repeat that one more time. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 single crochet stitches in the last stitch. There's 1, and then another one in that same stitch. So you should have 8 stitches. And I'm just going to lightly tug my tail to make sure the hole's closed. And then take out your stitch marker. And for round 3, we're going to make 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the 3rd stitch, and then we're going to increase in the 4th stitch. So 2 single crochet into that same stitch. And then we're going to repeat that pattern for the remaining stitches. So 3 single crochet and then increase in the last stitch. And at this point, it's going to start to kind of curve up on itself like this. You just want to push that back out so that you're working on the right side. Now for the next round, make 1 single crochet in that 1st stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the 3rd stitch, 1 single crochet in the 4th stitch, and then increase in that 5th stitch. And then we're going to repeat that pattern for the remaining stitches. So 4 single crochet and then increase in the last stitch. All right, so this is what I got so far. You can tuck that tail into the ear so that it's out of our way. You should have 12 stitches at this point. So once you make sure you have 12 stitches all around, our next round is just going to be 1 single crochet in every stitch. So no increasing in this round, just make 1 single crochet in every stitch and you should still be left with 12 stitches. Now for round 6, this will be our last increasing round. We're going to make 3 single crochet and then increase in the 4th stitch. So make 1 single crochet in the 1st stitch. Mark that off if you need to. 1 single crochet in the 2nd stitch. 1 single crochet in the 3rd stitch. And then 2 single crochet in that same stitch. In the 4th stitch. And then we're going to repeat that 2 more times and we should be left with 15 stitches. So once you've completed that, you should have 15 stitches all around. And now we're going to make 2 rows of 1 single crochet in every stitch. So no more increasing at this point, just make 1 single crochet in each stitch for 2 rows. All right, so I've completed those 2 rounds. You should be left with something that looks like this. And now we're gonna fasten off. So I'm gonna take out my stitch marker and slip stitch into the next stitch. So yarn over, pull through, pull that first loop through that second loop, and that's a slip stitch. And then we're gonna chain 1 and just cut a tail a few inches long enough to sew this onto the ear. So I like to cut about 12 inches. Now I'm just gonna pull that yarn through, tighten that up. So this is my first ear. So now I'm gonna show you how to embroider the inside of the ear. So I cut a piece of black yarn about 12 inches, thread your yarn needle, take your ear, and then whichever side you want to be the front, this is gonna be my front side. We're gonna come in through any stitch on the side. Just make sure to come out the middle between rows 1 and 2. So whatever that middle stitch is. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just whatever you think is the middle. We're basically just gonna embroider 4 vertical lines going like this. So it's gonna be a little triangle shape. So just use your best judgment to gauge where you want the first little strand to fall. I'm gonna say about there. So I'm gonna take my yarn needle and go between the last 2 rows through a stitch and then come out the tip through the same stitch and go through there. And be very gentle with this at first in case you want to change the placement of where you're embroidering your lines. So I would say that that's good, and I'm just gonna keep doing that 1 stitch over. So I'm going underneath between the last 2 rows and then coming out of the same stitch at the top. And then you want to pull it firmly, and it's gonna scrunch your project a little bit, but that's okay. And now that I look at it, I want to make another line on the left and then another line on the right. So I'm going to do the same thing and go in on the left once more and come out of that same stitch. So 1 stitch over and then come out of that same stitch. So it should look something like this. Now, I would say to cut your yarn a little bit longer because this is kind of short for me, but that's okay because we're just gonna tie this off. So take that yarn that you were working with before back onto your yarn needle, and then you're gonna come out the same stitch. So I'm just gonna push that back in and come out through the same stitch where we began. And you can see it's way too short, but that's okay. I'm just gonna pull on it a little bit. This one will just be a little bit tighter than the others. And then I'm just gonna double knot it here to secure it. Okay, and then once that's secure, it's gonna look a little wonky here, but just use your yarn needle to soften that up. And you can adjust how your embroidery looks. And then since we came out of the same stitch back here, we can actually just hide those tails inside the ear. So I'm gonna use my hook and come out of that same stitch and hide those tails inside the ear like that. And then you just want to stretch this and make sure it looks how you want it to. All right, so this is how my embroidery is looking. I am happy with that. So go ahead and make 2 of these, and then I'll show you how to sew these onto the base. So I have my 2 ears here. So now I'm going to show you how to sew these onto the base, or how I like to sew them. So thread your yarn needle, grab the base that you have, and I like to fold it so that you can locate the very center of the base. So for me, that's between these 2 rows here. So once you locate that, I'm just gonna pinch it so that I know where it is. So I'm gonna grab my yarn needle and just bring it between the 2 rows, like this, under 1 stitch in the middle. And then I'm just gonna pull that yarn through. So now I can place where I want my ear to sit. And I like to do this by just going through the stitch on the ear, and then I'm going to go underneath a stitch on the base. And then I like to do every other stitch, so I'll go underneath another stitch on the ear, and then underneath another stitch on the base. And I'm basically just going to do that all around the ear until it's attached. So once you've sewn on the ear, it's gonna look like this, and then you can fasten off. I like to do that by just going through a stitch and pulling through, but not all the way. Leave a little loop here, and then pull that yarn through that loop. And then I'm just gonna hide this yarn tail underneath the ear. So I'm just gonna go through any stitch on the side, pull my yarn through, and then you can snip this. And the rest of the yarn should just spring back into the ear. Like that. And now if you fold it in half, again, you can see that ear is sitting on the top, and we're gonna sew the other one directly next to it. So just to show you what I mean, we're not gonna leave any rows in between the ears. So I'm gonna take the other ear and just go through the same row that's right next to the other ear like this, so that they're directly in the center, and just pull that yarn through. And then I'm just gonna keep sewing this on just like we did for the other one, just going through a stitch on the ear and then going through a stitch on the base, and just do that all around until the ears are attached. And once they're attached, it's gonna look like this. So it's perfectly centered and it looks really cute. So now we're gonna move on to Quokka. So for Quokka, take your brown yarn. We're gonna make a slip knot. And a chain of 2. We'll be using that first chain as our magic circle again. So place 8 single crochet stitches into that first chain. So once you have 8 stitches, we're gonna make 3 rows of just 1 single crochet in every stitch all around. So there's no increasing or decreasing in this pattern. We're just gonna make 1 single crochet in every single stitch all around. And if it helps, you can mark off your first stitch with a stitch marker. Ooh. If you don't want to count 8 stitches all around. And once you're done with those 3 rows, I'll meet you back here to show you what to do next. So once you've done those 3 rows, it's going to look like this. just tuck that starting tail into the ear so it's out of our way. So now we're just going to make 4 single crochet across the top to close this up. So push your hook through the next stitch, and then before you pull through, push your hook through the last stitch that you made. So you're going to have to kind of fold it up here to go through that last stitch. It's going to look like this, just so you can see. So my hook is through both stitches, and then you can yarn over and complete your first single crochet. So now you can see the stitches are folded up like this, and just continue that. Make 3 single crochet going through both stitches like this. That's our second single crochet. Make sure your hook is going through the front and back stitch, and then through the last 2 stitches. So that's 4 single crochet across the top, and now we have this little ear here. And to fasten off, just chain 1 and cut a long tail for sewing. I always cut about 10 to 12 inches. And then just pull that yarn through. And now you can sew this to the top of your base. So I'll show you how I like to sew these on. So go ahead and make 2 of these, and then when you're ready to sew them on, grab your base. This is my base over here. And again, I'm going to fold it in half like this so I can locate the center. And for me, the center is these 2 rows here. So thread your yarn needle. And these are the center 2 rows here. I want those 2 rows to be between this ear and the other ear. So I'm gonna push my yarn needle through the side of those 2 rows. So not through the center of them, but to the side, like this. So that's where my yarn is coming out of, and these 2 rows are gonna be in between the 2 ears. And then I'm just going to weave in and out of a stitch on the ear, and then a stitch on the base. And I'm just going to repeat that until all the stitches are attached. So my 4 stitches are attached here. You can give it a little shake. If you like the floppy ears, you can fasten off here, but I like them to be a little bit more secure. So I'm just gonna go back and forth one more time through the stitches so that it's a little bit more secure. So once your ear is sewn on and you like the way it sits, you can fasten off. So I'm just going to go through a stitch, pull through, but not all the way, leave that little loop, and then pull my yarn through there to make a little knot. And then you can just hide this into the little ear. And then just snip that. And there is one ear attached. So when you attach the other ear, you're gonna go between these rows right here. So when I thread my yarn needle, I'm just gonna make sure that I go through those rows so that you have 2 rows in between your ears. And then I'm just going to continue to attach this just like the other ear, weaving in and out of the stitches. So once your little ears are all attached, it's going to look like this. I think this one is super cute, and they're nicely centered. So now we're going to move on to Jiniret. So for Jiniret, we're going to start with the white yarn, make a slip knot. Get that onto your hook, and we're going to start with a chain of 2, And we're going to use the first chain as our magic circle again. So start with 6 single crochet stitches into that first chain. So once you have 6 single crochet, round 2 is going to be 1 single crochet in the first stitch. If it helps, you can mark that first stitch so you know where you started. And we're going to make an increase in the next stitch. So 2 single crochet into that same stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern for the remaining stitches. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, increase in the next stitch. 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then increase in the last stitch. At the end of this round, you should have a total of 9 stitches. So now you can take out your stitch marker, make 1 single crochet in that first stitch, and we're actually just going to do 3 rows of just 1 single crochet in every stitch for 3 rows. So once you finish those 3 rows, I'll meet you back here to show you what to do next. Also, it's going to start to curve up on itself like this. You just want to push that back out so that you're working on the right side. So I just finished those 3 rows. Now you can take out your stitch marker, and we're going to fasten off by making a slip stitch in the next stitch. So yarn over, pull through, and pull that first loop through that second loop, chain 1, and cut a tail about 12 inches to sew this onto the base. And then pull that yarn through. And now I'll show you how to make the inside of the ear. So grab your pink yarn, make another slip knot, chain 2, and we're going to place 6 single crochet into that first chain. So once you have these 6 single crochet, slip stitch to the first stitch. So yarn over, pull through, pull the first loop through the second loop, chain 1, and then cut a tail long enough to sew this onto the front of the ear. So I still do about 10 inches. Pull that yarn through. And now we can sew this onto the front of the ear. So whichever side you want to be the front, like let's say I'm doing this side. So thread your yarn needle with your working yarn. Place this pink piece onto the front of your ear. So this will be my front. And I'd like to weave in and out of the stitches. So I'm going to go under the ear first, under a stitch right there. Pull that yarn through, and then I'm going to go under the pink piece and pull that yarn through. And I'm just going to do that all around until all the stitches are attached. And for this little yarn tail that we started with, I'm just going to snip it a little bit and just hide it underneath that little pink piece and continue to sew my stitches on. So once all your stitches are attached, it's going to look something like this, and I'm going to fasten off by going underneath the pink piece, underneath any stitch, pulling my yarn through, but not all the way. Make sure you leave that little loop, and then pull your yarn through that little loop to make a little knot. like that. And then you can push your yarn needle through the ear and come out any stitch on the ear and snip that so that it's hidden inside the ear. And that should spring back inside. And now we can sew this onto our base. So to sew this onto the base, I like to fold it in half so I can locate the center. So for me, that is these 2 rows here. And I like my ears to be about 6 rows apart. So once you locate the 2 center rows, so for me, that's these 2 rows here, I'm just gonna make sure to have 6 rows in between my ears. So for me, that's gonna be these right here. And I'm just gonna keep my finger on it so I know which rows to sew between. So I'm just gonna go underneath the center and pull that through those rows. And then I'm gonna sew this ear on just like the other ears. So I'm gonna go through a stitch on the ear and then through a stitch on the base. And I'm going to do that until all my stitches are attached. So once all your stitches are attached, you can fasten off, and I'm going to do the same thing. So just go through any stitch, pull your yarn through, but not all the way, and then push your yarn needle through that little loop and pull to make your little knot. And then you can hide this by going through any stitch on the ear, coming out of any stitch, and just snip that tail. And now that this one is attached, you can just count 6 rows over. So for me, that's going to be right here. And then start to attach the second ear the same way. So once your 2 ears are attached, it's going to look like this, and they are perfectly centered. And now we're going to move on to Leebit. So for Leebit, we're going to start with the pink yarn, make a slip stitch, and we're going to start with a chain of 9. So once you have 9 chains, we're going to make 8 single crochet down the chain. So starting with that second chain from your hook, just make 1 single crochet in each chain. So once you have 8 single crochet stitches, turn your work and make 1 single crochet stitch in the first 7 stitches. So you should have 1 stitch left over. So I made my 7 single crochet. This is my last stitch. So we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches in that same stitch. If you've ever made a crochet top, this is basically the pattern that you start with. Okay, so I have 3 stitches in that same stitch, and now you're going to turn it so that you're working on this side of the chains, and we're going to end it with 8 single crochet stitches. So 1 single crochet in each of the chains going down. All right, so this is what we have here. This is going to be the inside of our ear. And if you want to count your stitches all around, you should have 18 stitches. So at this point, you can chain one and snip your yarn. You don't have to have a long tail. I'm just going to snip it right there. Pull that yarn through. And we're going to repeat this exact same pattern with our white yarn. But when you're done, do not snip the yarn because we're going to attach these after. So repeat that exact same pattern with the white yarn. Don't snip, and I'll meet you at the end. All right, so I just completed the same pattern with the white yarn. So now we're going to start to connect these. So turn your work. We're going to place the pink part right over our white part. And now to connect these, we're going to first push our hook through that first stitch on the pink piece. And now we're going to push our hook through the first stitch on the white piece, like this. So our hook is through both stitches, and then we're going to make a single crochet. So we're going to repeat that for the first 8 stitches. So make sure to go through both stitches and make a single crochet. Do that until you have 8 single crochet. So here's our first 8 single crochet. And now for the next 2 stitches, we're gonna first do the same thing, go through the next 2 stitches, make a single crochet. But before we move on to the next stitch, we're gonna make another single crochet through the same stitches. Like that. So it's an increase going through both stitches. And now we're gonna repeat that for the next stitch. So go through both stitches again, make your single crochet, and make another single crochet in the same stitch. Like that. And now we're gonna end this by making 1 single crochet through the remaining 8 stitches. So just like we did for the beginning, just continue to attach your pieces with 1 single crochet. And now your pieces are attached. So now for the last row, you can chain 1, turn your work so that we're working on this side. And now we're going to be using half double crochet. So yarn over, push your hook through that first stitch, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through those 3 loops. Make 1 half double crochet for the first 8 stitches. So that was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now for the next 4 stitches, the pattern is going to be 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochet, 1 half double crochet, 2 half double crochet. So 1 half double crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 half double crochet in the next stitch. So there's our first half double crochet. Make another one in the same stitch. 1 half double crochet in the next stitch, and then a half double crochet increase in the next stitch. So 1 half double crochet, and then another one in the very same stitch. And then we can end this with another 8 half double crochet. So 1 half double crochet in the remaining 8 stitches. All right, and now we can chain 1 and snip a tail long enough to sew this onto the base. So I'm going to do another 12 inches. About, I don't really measure it, but I think that's about 12 inches. Pull that yarn through. And this is your ear, so just flip that to the front so that it kind of flops over like a bunny ear. And then I like to just snip these tails a little bit, like that. And then hide these with my hook inside the ear. Like that. So now I'll show you how to sew this up. So go ahead and thread your yarn needle. And we're gonna pinch the ear so that the corners are touching like this. It's gonna create that kind of bunny ear effect like that. And I'm just gonna sew back and forth through the bottom stitches just a few times. That should be enough just to secure that shape. So go ahead and make 2 of these, and then I'll show you how I sew them onto the base. So this is my base here. I'm gonna fold it in half so that I can locate the center. So these are my center 2 rows here. I want my ears to be 2 rows apart. So I want those 2 rows to be between the ears. So I'm just gonna use my finger to mark it off so that I know where I'm sewing. And I'm just gonna start to sew. I'm gonna go underneath the stitch and just pull that yarn through. And now I know that these 2 rows are going to be between my ears, so I'm just going to sew this right next to those 2 rows. And I like to do this by just going through a stitch on the bottom of the ear and then through a stitch on the base. And I'm just going to repeat that through the ear and then through the base. And I'm just going to do this all around here until my ear is attached. All right, so my ear is attached, and I'm just going to fasten off by going through any stitch on the ear. Pull through, but not all the way. Make sure you leave a little loop right there. And then push your yarn needle through that loop and pull through to make a little knot. And you can move this around. If it's too floppy, you can go back through the stitches and sew a little bit more so that it's more secure. I like it like that. So I'm just gonna hide this yarn tail in my ear by going through the ear. Make sure you're not coming out of this pink piece here. Pulling that yarn tail through and just snipping that. And there's my ear attached. So now when I go to attach the other ear, I want 2 rows in between, so I'm going to attach it right there. About there. And then I'm going to attach this the exact same way. So just going through the ear and then through the base. Like that. So once your ears are all attached, this is what it's going to look like. They are perfectly centered and actually very stable. So now we're going to move on to the next member. So now we're going to make the strands of hair for BbokAri. So we're going to start with a slip knot. And we're going to chain 9. So once you have 9 chains, we're going to start with a slip stitch in the second chain from the hook. So push your hook through there, yarn over, pull through, and then pull that first loop through that second loop. So that's your slip stitch. And then we're going to make a single crochet in the next chain. 1 half double crochet in the next chain. So yarn over, push your hook through that chain, yarn over, pull through. You have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that's a half double crochet. And then we're going to make 2 double crochet. So 1 in the next chain and 1 in the next chain. Yarn over and push through the next chain. Yarn over and pull through. So you have 3 loops on your hook. To complete a double crochet, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. And then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. And that's 1 double crochet. We're going to make another double crochet in the next chain. After you made those 2 double crochet, we're going to slip stitch into the next chain. So this is your first strand of hair. Now we're going to make the next 2 strands. So what we want to do here is, so you have these 2 little chains left. So before we go into the next chain, we're going to chain 6. And once you have 6 chains, we're going to repeat the same sequence that we did for the first strand. So slip stitch into the next chain, single crochet into the next chain, half double crochet into the third chain, double crochet into the next chain, and then double crochet into that last chain. And now we're going to slip stitch into that second to last chain. So the next chain here, just make a slip stitch. So you should have these 2 strands here, and then you have 1 chain left. So we're basically just going to repeat that same process that we just did, starting with that chain of 6. And then repeat that pattern. Slip stitch into the next stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and then 2 double crochet stitches. And now we're going to end with a slip stitch in that last chain. So you have these 3 little strands here. Now I'm just going to chain 1 and cut a pretty long tail. I'd say about 12 to 15 inches for sewing. All right, so once I've done that, we have these little strands here. We're going to start sewing on the back. It's going to sit onto our light stick like this. But first we're going to sew these 2 little strands together so that it makes a little part in the hair like this. Before I even do that, I'm just going to weave in this little yarn tail from the beginning, and then I'll show you how to do the sewing. Okay, so I just weaved in that yarn tail. Basically, you just go back and forth through a couple stitches and then you snip. So I'm going to thread my yarn needle. And make sure that it's facing upside down. So this is the side that you were working on. It looks like this. You can see all your stitches pretty clearly. You want it facing down because this is how we're going to sew it on to the base. But first, like I said, we're going to sew these 2 pieces on the left together. So I'm basically just going to weave my yarn through the stitches, just going in and out of the stitches until it's coming out that little crevice in between the 2 strands. and then just gently pull that through. So now my yarn is over here in that little V, and I'm just gonna pinch these two together. Hold on, let me get that out the way. I'm just gonna pinch these two together and then just start going back and forth through the stitches on the side here. So once you've gone back and forth a few times, I'm just gonna leave that last stitch so that there's a little part there. It's gonna be parted like this, and this is how we're gonna sew it onto the base. We're gonna sew the top of it to the center of the base here. So I'll show you what I mean. So fold it in half so that you can locate the center, and then I'm just gonna lay this over top so that the center of it lines up with the center of the top like this. And then I'll keep my fingers on it and open it up. And then you're just gonna sew the top of it right there to the base. Keep your fingers on it so you don't lose your place. And if you do, just fold it in half again and follow the same steps. And you can use your fingers to spread this out too if you want the part a little bit wider. You can sew it like that. I kind of like the way it falls naturally though, like little bangs like this. So that's how I'm gonna sew it on. And make sure you sew this part down, the part that's all the way at the edge, so that that's secure. All right, so I've pretty much completed my sewing. This is what it looks like. I like the hair strands to kind of fall over the edge like bangs. I'm just gonna fasten off. So I just go through any stitch next to my yarn needle and pull through, but don't pull through all the way. Make sure you leave a little loop, and then pull your yarn, push your yarn needle through that loop, and then pull that yarn to make a little knot. So once that's secure, I'm gonna hide this yarn tail by going underneath. I'm gonna go through the base like this, and then you can see now we're underneath the base, and I'm just gonna weave this in through the stitches. So I'm just gonna go in and out of the stitches down here, just a few of them. Pull that through. And now you can snip your yarn. And that should spring back between the stitches so you can't see it. And it's nice and secure. All right, well, I hope you had fun making this. I'm gonna move on to FoxI.N.y. So for PuppyM, we're gonna use our cream yarn. This is in the color Shell. We're gonna start with a slip knot and a chain of 2. And we'll be using the first chain as our magic circle. So we're gonna pop 6 single crochet into that first chain. Now for round 2, we're gonna place 6 increases. So we're gonna do 2 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. So that's our first single crochet. If you need to use a stitch marker, you can mark this first stitch here. I'm gonna use this bobby pin and then place another single crochet into that same stitch. So that's an increase. We're going to repeat that in all the stitches all around. So you place 2 single crochet stitches in every stitch. So at this point you should have a total of 12 stitches. Now for round 3, we're just going to be making 1 single crochet in every stitch all around. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch and mark that off. And then just keep making 1 single crochet in every stitch. Now for round 4, the pattern is going to be 1 single crochet in the first stitch, and then 2 single crochet in the next stitch. So we're increasing in that second stitch. 1 and another one into the same stitch, and 2. And we're going to repeat that pattern all around. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and 2 single crochet in the next stitch. Repeat that all around until you have a total of 18 stitches. Once you have your 18 stitches, at this point we're going to make 5 rounds of just 1 single crochet in every stitch all around. So there's no more increasing. Just place 1 single crochet in every stitch for the next 5 rounds. And once you complete these 5 rounds, I'll meet you back here to show you what to do next. All right, so once you've done those 5 rounds, we're going to move on to the next round. So for the next round, the pattern is going to be 1 single crochet in the first stitch. And then we're going to make an invisible decrease. So a normal decrease would be going under the stitch like that, where we pull the yarn through, going under the next stitch, pulling the yarn through. But for an invisible decrease, we're just going to go under the next front loop only, like that. And then before we pull our yarn through, we're going to go under the next front loop. So you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So that's an invisible decrease. And we're going to repeat that all the way around. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then 1 invisible decrease. Front loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And repeat that all the way around until you have a total of 12 stitches. So once you have your 12 stitches, the next 2 rows are just going to be 1 single crochet in every stitch all around. So there's my first single crochet. Just do 1 single crochet in every stitch for 2 rows, and then I'll show you what to do for the last row. All right, so once you've completed those 2 rows, for the last row, we're just going to make 6 invisible decreases so that we're left with 6 stitches. So just like we did before, we're going to go under the next front loop and under the next front loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through the last 2. And we're going to do that in all the stitches, and we should be left with 6 stitches. So once you've done that all the way around, you'll be left with 6 stitches. You can take out your stitch marker. And we're just gonna make 3 single crochet through the stitches to close up this little hole. So push your hook through the next stitch, and then we're gonna push it again through the last stitch that we made. And it might be a little hard to see. Just move your working yarn out of the way so you can see that last stitch, and push your hook through there. So your hook should be going through both the first and last stitch, and then yarn over and make a single crochet. And then we're going to repeat that 2 more times. So go through both stitches like this, and then go through the last 2 stitches and make your single crochet. And this is our ear, so we're just going to chain 1 and cut a tail a few inches long enough to sew this onto the base. And now I'll show you how I like to sew these on. So this is a base I made for PuppyM. First I fold it in half so I can locate the center row. So for me, that's going to be these 2 rows here, and I'm just going to put my finger on it. So I like to sew my ears on 6 rows apart. So if this is the center, then these would be the 6 rows that would be in between my ears. And I'm just going to leave my finger here to mark off where I'm going to be weaving in and out of the stitches. So thread your yarn needle. And then I'm going to place my ear on top so that it lines up with where I want to sew it. Right there. And now I'm just going to start to weave in and out of the stitches. I like to go through a stitch on the base and then through a stitch on the ear. And I'm just going to do that through all the stitches. So once your ear is sewn on to your liking, I'm just going to fasten off here by going through any stitch. And pulling my yarn through, but not all the way. You want to leave a little loop here so you can just push your needle through there and pull it gently to make a little knot. And then I'm going to hide this yarn tail inside the ear. And then I'm going to snip that. And the tail should just spring back inside the ear. Okay, so that's 1 ear attached. And then I just count 6 rows over. And I'm going to attach my next ear right there the exact same way. So once your puppy ears are attached, it's going to look like this. It is nice and evenly spaced. And now we're going to move on to FoxI.N.y. So for FoxI.N.y, this will be an updated pattern because before I was just using my cat pattern for the FoxI.N.y ears, but I found a way to make them a little bit bigger and a little bit wider. So we're going to start with a slip knot. Chain 2. And we're going to be using the first chain as our magic circle. So place 6 single crochet into that first chain. Once you have 6 single crochet, for round 2, we're going to make 1 single crochet in the first stitch, and you can mark that off with a stitch marker or a bobby pin. 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then 2 single crochet in the third stitch. And we're going to repeat that. So 2 single crochet and then increase in the third stitch. Alright, so you should have 8 single crochet stitches at this point. Now for round 3, we're going to make 1 single crochet in the first stitch. And then we're going to make 2 single crochet in the next stitch. So we're going to increase in the next stitch. That's 1 single crochet and then another one in the very same stitch. And we're going to repeat that pattern all around so that we have a total of 12 stitches. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch and then increase in the next stitch. So once you have your 12 single crochet, round 4 is just going to be 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. So there's no increasing in this round. Just make 1 single crochet in each stitch. You should still have 12 stitches at the end of this round. Okay, so for round 5, we're going to make 1 single crochet in the first stitch. Mark that off. 1 single crochet in the next stitch. And then increase in the third stitch. So we're going to make 2 single crochet in the same stitch. That's 1 and 2. And we're going to repeat that pattern all the way around until we have a total of 16 stitches. So 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then increase in that third stitch. Okay, so for the next round, we're just going to be making 1 single crochet in every stitch all the way around. So you should still have 16 single crochet stitches at the end of this round. So after you made those 16 stitches, the next round will be 1 single crochet in the first stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the third stitch, and then increase in the fourth stitch. So we're making 2 single crochet in the same stitch. And repeat that pattern all the way around until you have a total of 20 stitches. So 3 single crochet and then increase in the fourth stitch. At the end of this round, you'll have 20 stitches. So for our last 2 rounds, we're just going to be making 1 single crochet in every stitch all around. So there's no more increasing, just make 1 single crochet in every stitch all around, and I'll meet you back here after 2 rows. So once you've reached this point, you can take out your stitch marker, and I'm going to fasten off by just slip stitching in the next stitch, chaining one, and cut a tail long enough to sew this ear onto the base. I always do about 12 inches. So now that we have the main part of the ear, I'm going to show you how to make the inside of the ear. So take your pink yarn, this is kind of like a coral pink yarn, and make a slip knot. We're going to start with a chain of 7. So once you have 7 chains, we're going to make 1 single crochet in each chain, starting with that second chain from your hook. So 1 single crochet in every chain. All right, so you have your 6 single crochet. Now you can chain 1, turn your work, and we're going to start with a decrease in the first 2 stitches. So push your hook through that first stitch, yarn over and pull through, push your hook through the next stitch, yarn over and pull through. So you have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And now make 1 single crochet in the next stitch, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and now we're going to end with a decrease. So push your hook through the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, push your hook through the last stitch, yarn over and pull through. So you have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that's your second decrease. And then you can chain 1 and turn your work. So you can see we decreased the number of stitches, so we only have 4 stitches left. And now we're going to make a decrease in the first 2 stitches. And then we're going to make another decrease in those last 2 stitches. So you can see we decreased to 2 stitches. And now you can chain 1 and turn your work again. And now we're just going to end with 1 decrease in those last 2 stitches. So now we're left with 1 stitch, and we can fasten off here. Just chain 1 and cut a tail long enough for sewing. So this is the inner piece that's going to go inside the ear. So we have our ear here. We're just going to sew this on to the center of the ear like this. So I threaded my yarn needle, and I'm just going to go underneath a stitch on the ear, pull that through, and just go underneath a stitch on the inner part and pull that through. And I'm just going to keep continuing like that until I've sewn on the perimeter of this little pink part. So this is my ear with the inside piece sewn on. So once you have your 2 FoxI.N.y ears, it's time to sew these on. So I like to fold the base in half so that I could locate the center. So that's going to be these 2 rows here. And I like my ears to be 2 rows apart. So this is the center, so they're going to be, these 2 rows are going to be in between the ears. I'm going to locate those center 2 rows. It's these over here. And I know that I want these 2 rows in between, so I'm going to leave my finger there so I know which rows I'm talking about. And I'm just going to thread my yarn needle through the stitch right next to those rows. And just go in the middle towards the front. And this kind of places where I want that ear to sit. So now I'm going to start sewing it by just going through a stitch on the ear, and then through a stitch on the base. And then make sure you're pulling very gently for these. I like to do every other stitch on the ear, and then through a stitch on the base. And I'm just going to continue like that all around the ear until it's fully attached. All right, so once that ear is attached, this is what it looks like. So as you can see, the 2 rows that are centered are right here in between. So I want to sew my other ear right next to it, like this. So I'm just using my hands to place it so that I know where I want the ear to sit, and those 2 rows are still in between. So I'm going to start sewing from this side. And just go all around the ear, making sure that the ear is sitting like this and that these stitches are sewn right there on the line. So once your ears are all attached, it's gonna look like this with 2 rows in between, perfectly spaced. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you have fun making these. If you do make these, I made an If you're making these for a tour, I hope you guys have a lot of fun, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Bye.